Well, I have heard that strawberry takoyaki is a thing. Blasphemy, but a thing. Cold opener for this one, both gave us a brief recap of the end of the last season and a little preview of the season to come, including the Ojamajo's redesigns that we'll get to in just a sec. We then got the third opening of this franchise, and yeah, unlike with Sharp that took me like a few episodes to win me over, I kind of like this one right off the bat. I think it mostly comes down to the melody literally being more my beat, with the tunes building up like a whole symphony, making for almost a pure earworm, though not to the point that it makes you want to tear off my ears from overexposure. The visuals were also quite good by effectively previewing the major sequences of the show, including their transformations, what their major focus of the series is going to be, and spoiling Hana and Oyaji's eventual return to the series. Yeah, okay, that wasn't too great. Nor was the Ojamajo partaking in some twerking long before it was a thing with magical girls. Still, those gripes aside, this was a great opening that's competing with the original for my personal favorite of the franchise. I still really love those first few beats though. Anyway, did you know Harukaze literally means spring winds? Because this show decided to be rather on the nose with it, admittedly with a nice first shot symbolizing the new school semester for the daughters of the family. I guess the tiny person in her mouth finally decided to move out. Later, the Ojamajo gathered at the Mahojo, where we were able to get a good look at their redesigns, and yeah, I liked them for the most part. I mean, all of the changes in their clothes look great, while still using the same basic colors, like with Doremi's original outfit, but spraying them out more evenly to make it look more fashionable. Ompu might have been a bit of a downgrade, as I do miss the green in her dress, but Aiko looks much better without the suspenders in my opinion. That said, all of them did suffer from one pretty significant little issue. Yeah, for whatever reason, they widened their foreheads and took away their bangs to the point that I think you could rent out space on those things. I don't know if someone thought it would make them look cuter, but I think it's more distracting than anything. Thus, I would say these redesigns kind of work out to be more side grades than anything. Not necessarily better or worse than the originals, but I guess a bit of a change up is better than nothing at all, so whatever. Anyway, even though they weren't witch apprentices anymore, the Ojamajo were still working at the Mahodo, if only to keep a small connection with their Daughteru. Fortunately, and so that we can have an actual season and everything, the Witch Queen and a council of elders were holding discussions on giving the Ojamajo yet another freaking loophole to become witches again. Granted, it was for a good reason in wanting to fully break the previous queen's curse of the witch frogs. However, as Shin Godzilla showed, everything has to be politics, even dealing with threats that should be dealt with sooner rather than later, so it came down to a vote. Though I was still expecting more pointing of the finger and trying to get the other side busted, to the point that we can all just say, y'all suck. Ultimately, and in a bit of a touching twist, the Ojamajo just barely gained approval for recommissioning, with votes from Majo Heart and Majodon, both witches they had won over in the previous season. However, as a compromise to break the stalemate, they would of course have to give them some occasional tests because some old habits just will not die with this franchise.
There's deja vu, there's language processing, there's deja vu.
With that, the Ojamajo were brought in front of the queen about their now second recommissioning, where she also explained how their test of the season would involve making sweets. Well, considering how Doremi turned out, I don't think this will go well. Which, sure enough, the Ojamajo admitted that none of them really knew how to bake, but fortunately, with a new season would come a new lead. In this case, we got Momoko Asuka, who was an apprentice from an overseas Mahodo, where they made sweets. I'll read the political joke. But yeah, on top of her VA playing Masaru and later another blonde magical girl just a few years later, Nami Miyahara was much like her character and had spent her junior high school years overseas, though in her case it was Austria. Thus, like Tetsuya Kakihara, she was fluent in English and German, which landed her roles of bilingual characters like Momoko here and Wallace in the Digimon Zero 2 movie, which was her first major theatrical role and probably what landed her this role. Granted, you can kind of hear her Austrian accent, even though she's supposed to be playing American characters, but hey, if Arnie can get away with it, why not? Anyway, they head back to the Mahodo to do some renovations, and instantly introduce Momoko to their magical toad, who she mistook for her old mentor.
I mean, they all look alike! Not cool, Sonic.
Kind of ironic, considering the subject matter of one of our future Spotlight episodes. Then, of course, they took this time to introduce the new toys of the season, which also meant a new transformation sequence that, I'm gonna be honest, is probably my least favorite so far. I think part of it is because I don't care for the bubbly or BGM here, or just how it doesn't feel as snappy as other versions, since they're basically playing patty cakes rather than playing an instrument like last season. Though, most of all, I just don't think it feels as magical when it feels a little too busy with literally one too many steps in their little dances here. It's not bad per se, but yeah, I just really prefer the previous season's transformation sequence. Won't really say much about the witch redesigns, as they don't feel significantly different, even though they did make changes, like switching out the mantles for vests, which again is more of a side grade than anything. Nothing necessarily better or worse than the previous version. Lastly, we got the new magical stage sequence, which again, I hate to have to keep coming off so negative, but come on, you try and tell me what feels more magical. Spinning like a ballerina into the air before crossing wands in the center, or just raising their sticks and then just kind of sliding into position here. I will admit, the candles are a pretty neat touch, and I actually think they pulled off better than the Delicious Party, but yeah, it's no contest for me which sequence is just superior. Anyway, they cast the stage to turn the Mahodo into a bakery, and from there, Momoko showed off the main functions of their new abode after doing a quick costume change thanks to their outfits now being reversible. I bet they don't taste as good as the everlasting gobstoppers. And hey, why stop at just one brand new toy when they could also throw in the Pashier Poron, which was more of a pepper mill that could grind what I could only describe as Kira2 because yeah, Precure stole a lot from this season, and it would be one of their main cooking utensils for the season, even though they really should focus more on just making a better base product, but whatever. All of this was interesting world building, and they were shaking things up, but honestly, I think the most significant and interesting status quo shakeups came up in the next scene at their school. Because as it turned out, like most schools, students were being moved to different classes after moving up a grade. As a result, all of the Ojamajo, except for Doremi, were going to a different homeroom than Seki's. Fortunately, she was also going with best girl Reika, and even ended up splitting up the Stooges. Hey, anyone wants to be topped off? She also ended up with some other students, including Screechy, Kotake, and Masaru. The last one was probably mostly just to give Nami Miyahara more to work with, as Momoko ended up transferring to their class. With that, the episode ended with the interesting little detail that Momoko was actually rather shy amongst the Muggles of their class, to the point that she seemed like a completely different girl when she wasn't interacting with Doremi, hinting that she was still indeed a returning student.
Please help me whenever I need a help, okay?
One who also needed to work on her vocabulary. This was a very effective reintroduction to the troublesome witches just by doing everything they should do for a season premiere. Because ultimately, anytime a show gets a new season, the main thing they have to do is shake up the status quo at least a little. This first episode certainly did more than enough with some new magic, goals for them to achieve, and of course, a bilingual witch. So far, Momoko is also a very fun and quirky new character who I am looking forward to see more of in the same way I always like to see more of Joseph Joestar. As we pointed out, while things have certainly changed up, general patterns have kind of remained the same, with the Ojamajo again just regaining their magic because the plot demanded it, and in spite of how we ended the previous season really hammering home that they weren't going to ever get back. Now, of course, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing for now, and it's just something worth pointing out, and even then, some repetition could be overlooked thanks to some very significant change-ups, like going from selling knickknacks to sweets this season. As a result, they ended up introducing a lot of new mechanics that we can look forward to seeing this season, alongside the fun new character in Momoko. So far, she is very enjoyable, and also clearly has some great story potential as a returning girl, still adjusting to being back in Japan, which does involve a lot of real-life issues for kids. That plus the class transfers were actually some of the most interesting status quo shakeups. I mean, yeah, the new magic was interesting and all, but really, this show is more about the characters, so I am a little more interested in seeing how the Ojamajo will adjust to their new everyday settings. And overall, this first episode of the third season did everything it needed to do and more. Sure, I wasn't the biggest fan of all of their aesthetic changes, especially the stuff involving magic, but still, for a first episode, they set up a strong foundation for a lot to come later. Needless to say, I'm more than willing to let the Ojamajo cook, though hopefully they won't burn anything. Thank you for watching, and do be sure to check out some of our other magical girl related videos. The second part of the Precure Max Heart series review will start production this week, and hopefully we should have something done by June, at least now that things have kind of calmed down in my personal life. So, do look forward to it. Until then though, for now my friends, it's
Son of a bitch!
yeah, Joseph, you really gotta learn to watch where you're going. Also, it's not son of the bitch, it's son of a bitch.